Okay, so I'm going to start by showing off some of the student creation. So this is another student creation I found on one of my fans on Instagram using Portrait Studio. It's beautiful because the point is that in order to have multiple shapes in one scene, you get two really, really important factors, and everybody pay attention. To have multiple components in one scene means that you are going to be one, getting a good reference for how the light source acts as a vanishing point. So the cast shadows don't all just move in one direction. They all respond to the light source. You also have situations where you have rim lighting, like we see here on the side of the face, just a little bit, and rim lighting just around here in a silhouette. You also see how the further objects have less contrast all around, and how objects that are closer have higher contrast, a bit more drowning shadows and drowning contrast in the light. So remember, if you own Portrait Studio, use this to your advantage. If you have a project coming up or a piece that has a bit more of a demand for just having, you have to reference all components, that it's not just a close-up. It's more than one person. It's middle ground, background, foreground. It's all of that. It's really good if you have Portrait Studio to use this power. This is a very, very big deal. Abu worked really, really hard on making this possible, having more than one object in one scene, while making sure your computers don't crash, because at the end of the day, these are really, really high quality models all around. Yeah, this is beautiful. So if you create anything with Portrait Studio, please share it with me. I'd love to see it. It's going to go on a reel of student creations for the trailer that I'll be making very soon. I'm also just working on a couple little sketches here and there using Portrait Studio, which I'll compile for the trailer as well. For those who have had the issue with the recent update that we did, it uploaded during a power outage and an internet outage. So what happened was only part of the update went out. People got half a program, not a complete download. The patch pretty much corrupted whoever got the update, everyone's Portrait Studio. So there is a fix, of course. And it is available on my YouTube channel. So please go and look at that. So let me just go and get that for you guys. So I'm just gonna go on videos. It's this video right here, Portrait Studio 0.4 update, failed to initialize player error fix. If you're getting the other error, I don't think there is any other error. People who buy it now and download it, they have no problem. It's anyone who currently owns it that got the bad patch, which is not everybody. But if you have, please make sure that you're reading through this or watching this. I will explain everything thoroughly. Also, really, really good news. The gears are moving in the right direction for a Mac release. So look out for that. And then finally, if you guys went on Facebook, you see that I am calling out to everyone who is in our time zone, who can make it to the live streams. Please do make it. I know I upload the recordings as a luxury for those who are not in our time zone, but if you are, technically the class is Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's not an offline class, it's a live class. I don't want it to make it offline because it doesn't feel like a lecture room. It doesn't feel like a conference, a communication between a group of people and their teacher. So I appreciate it when you guys do come, and everyone who has made it to every single one, like people like Tom. You have my just unending gratitude. Thank you so much for being there. You guys are the best. For those who show up every single time, everyone else is also the best, but you guys are more best. And then there is Patreon. So if you guys are interested in supporting Patreon, the 29th and the 30th and the 31st, that's all you have left to register for this, for next month's Patreon. So if you want to be part of the rewards and you want to be part of the assignments for next month, please make sure that you are registering on Patreon. Okay, so let's get started. We have this piece here. I'm going to get started with this one. And the biggest problem with this one, it's beautiful. The head is tilted. I'm teaching, so no more Skype. Okay. So the head tilt is beautiful. I love the head tilt. I like seeing the head tilting. A lot of people forget to tilt the head because it's just not something that they see as after drawing perfect portraits for so long, after drawing a perfect kind of like bust, it's hard to just remember that the head does move and the head does tilt, and there's so much attitude in a head tilt. So I really, really like that. However, you guys have to remember that there's a walk cycle. So if we were to give this character a walk cycle, would we just give him like a weird like puppet walk cycle? Well, how would we give him a walk cycle that represents his personality? A walk cycle is a reflection of how they lead, which part of their body leads the walk. So the other day, a doctor that I was speaking with, the way she walked around wearing her scrubs and her Crocs and stuff, she just literally walked around with her hips. Like her hips led every single motion. Her back just kind of like was there for the ride, and her hips led the motion. So it was a weird asymmetrical walk, and it was really a characteristic of something that a walk that I would give someone a little bit more relaxed, but also a stickler for cleanliness, or a stickler for complete tidiness or something like that. So I saw so much personality in her walk, and it just kind of recorded in my visual library. So there was another guy in that same emergency room who had been shot in the knee and refused treatment because the police were on him about why he was shot. You know, a gunshot wound was supposed to be reported to the police. And I looked at his walk cycle, or the way he walked, his gait, and he was just walking with his shoulders. Like, he was just like haunched forward like a gargoyle. He was really short, stout, and a little stacked too. And he just, his legs were just a short stride because his legs were short, but he kind of made up for how short and mean he was. His voice was so deep, really thick accent, and he was just walking with his shoulders. So it really is a real way to characterize someone. I know that the head tilt is cute and all nice, and you throw the hand to the side, and he's got that kind of Evil Dead walk, but I still want to see something that is a bit more characteristic of his loss of control. Maybe he's so messed up with the dark magic that he kind of no longer has a soul in him, so that just the monsters or the demon has taken over his walk, and so his legs are pretty much what the demon is moving, and his body's just there for the ride, like he has strings attached to him. So if the strings are attached, they're characteristic of him not in control of himself. Do you see that? I actually recommend you actually put strings on this. That would be really cool. Come to think of it, just a couple of strings. Invisible ones, don't be cheesy about it. Just kind of like, in and out, really nice and faded. But one thing that I would do to improve his gait and characteristic is just completely push his legs forward to make it seem like he doesn't have control. See what that did? Kind of just gave him an attitude problem, and at the same time, it made him feel like he's not in control of his body. Bella's walk cycle from Beauty and the Beast is, for example, was inspired by ballerinas. Good way to make a princess feel elegant. Oh yeah, that's very true. The perfect posture, the way she walks. Actually, that's really true. So, look out for these people that you find everywhere. It was like really funny. The same day I saw the nurse walking all girly and with her hips forward. It was the same day I saw that gunshot dude who wasn't cooperating with the police, who pulled the IV out and bled everywhere. So just think about that. That's a lot to characterize. You have a lot to characterize with in that department. So it stems from the problem that students, I'm just putting this in front of the arm. It stems from the problem that students forget to involve the animation. If you were to watch this character move, you should be designing all the aspects. I know you're probably pre-production, you're interested in that. But you're not really thinking about how much you're going to have to design, again, how many layers of design are involved when you actually move the character, which you shouldn't be throwing on a modeler or somebody who is responsible for animation like an animator. You should be doing that yourself. So I'm just tucking the arm in. I push the hips out. Filter, liquefy. I never really recommend stuff that's like strings or stuff like that, but those strings really did make it work. Now I'm just trying to make his chest area feel a little bit more three-dimensional and have a bit of volume, and that means that the stuff that the ribbons or belts or anything that wraps around an object is an unintentional, indirect contour line. So you have to make sure the contour line represents the volume of the three-dimensional object you're painting. Okay, so the hips are out. I'm going to go to a before and after and see if I can make a bit more happen. A tilted head would be like someone who's dead, who you're trying to like let's say someone was unconscious and you're trying to move them around. Their head would kind of be like all over the place, fallen. So the head tilt was great, but I would actually request more. Start off with the neck. Kind of like he's sizing you up, and then just tilt the head. Like he's lost control, but also sizing you up a little bit, and his head is kind of tilted away. So sorry for the bad lasso, but okay, so before, after, just a little bit more. Another thing that I would do is complete the walk cycle. So maybe this is the longest stride that he has, or the longest step that he takes. So yours should be a bit higher. The foot should be a bit higher and more behind. So we've got that. The ankle's a bit thin actually for a male. Thin ankles for a female, remember that. I know we don't talk about legs a lot, and we don't talk about you know, a lot of that stuff that has to do with shoes or leggings, or a lot of the accessories in the lower part of or the lower half of the body, lower half. But yeah, don't forget about how ankles are also like a way to feminize a character. Shin muscles, or calf muscles, sorry. So I'm just throwing off that bit to the farthest. And then I'm going to cheat a little bit with some fake atmospheric perspective. So it's just like a little fade. It's just, we use it. It's not really atmospheric perspective. If there was like some sort of like dry ice floating around on the ground, go ahead. Speaking of like the ground and the environment, I don't think what you've done is a good idea here. If you were designing him for like a swamp, and you had to have the environment behind him there in the character design sheet, then do what you gotta do. But if this is just like a single character and the environment artist will do his thing, you really don't have to worry about the colors surrounding the character that much. You're just here for the character. So this is why I encourage students to just have a gray background, which I don't think is possible today, but I really think that this lasso isn't cooperating. But I really think that you should have a bit more grayness in the background. It shouldn't be that important a color, because there are yellows that are making him look eerie and spooky, but it just seems like it's just part of who he is. It's not so much, doesn't seem like it's part of who he is, sorry. It feels like it's part of the environment. Whereas I want the colors that I choose on this character to be part of who they are. So you're using all these gooey greens on the outside. The environment shouldn't have that much to do with the character. You see how very little saturation you had on him the entire time? So it made it seem like you had more colors than you really did. I'm just desaturating only the background. You didn't have much going on. You made the environment around him feel very, very bright and very present. And yes, it is a desaturated kind of almost pukey green. But just if it's going to be that desaturated to begin with, or your intention was to make it desaturated, then just make it grayscale in the background. Now it feels like he's more dark. Now it feels like he's more out of control with his body, or he's taken over. And then what we'll do is focus on the saturation that he has. So if he has purple, show us the purple. This is meant to be a read from the distance. And then see how far you can get away with these colors? So I would probably push them to here and then go into the icky stuff right over there. I think this is the best combo. If you want to have those if you want to have those little strings, go ahead and include those. And I am just going to brighten up the background just a little bit. I feel like it should be, because it's a character design, it's not supposed to be, no, it's too bright. It's not supposed to be, like, only if we only see this character in the darkness, then it would make sense why we are, you know, drawing him in a dark environment. But I really think that you should go just a little bit lighter, because we're seeing these colors here. Next would be to Just create some texture differences in whatever it is we're drawing. So if there's leather there, if there's sheen here, I'll put that there. If there is some silky material here, I will also raise that up just to show the silky difference in the fabric. And then if there is just a little bit, not too much, if there is just a bit more shine on the little hems, I'm not sure what they're called, these little dudes here. You might want to show off how they're of a different material. It's a great way to kind of make the fabric make sense. Or like the stitching or the design makes sense. And that's kind of what I would do. I'm not going to give him that golden hair. I'm going to desaturate it into a more pale white. So that should help with not making him look like golden. I want him to look like a corrupted elf. Okay, so something's not working. Alright, and that's it. So look at the before and after. It's quite a bit of a change, but at least now we know the colors that we're dealing with the character. Before, after. Just a bit more attitude. If I was allowed, if I could, I'd really make him lean back, really make him look like he's just shifted backward completely, and we do that by raising the density and this increasing the size. Just like that. Don't want to destroy it, but something a little bit more like he's lost control of his body. And he kind of walks with a very, very inhuman, horrific kind of gait. And just like that. Before, after. Okay. Curious, Angelina asks, when you paint, I notice you don't zoom in a lot. Should we be painting the same way all the time? And sometimes you have to detail and you paint in, but you feel when it is time to detail. But unfortunately, detailing is more tempting than zooming out, so you will accidentally over detail and not zoom out to measure. So when I detail, I always have a little warning alarm in my mind saying, hey, zoom back out because you just used a pretty big brush, you covered a substantial amount of space. You need to figure out what you just did to the bigger picture. It's just a small detail, it shouldn't be disrupting too much. I have my navigator open as well, that should help, help me decide without having to zoom out all the time if I am zoomed in. Okay, so that was a quick little fix there. This one has a lot of problems. This one requires a lot of liquefiers. So I know this artist, it's Daniel, and he's been with us for a long time. But for some reason, Daniel, a lot of the stuff we talk about in class is not there. So I wonder what it is exactly that is keeping you from being a little bit more clean with your work. You are rushing the finish so much. You did not stop just to smoothen out the edge of her face. What is it that is so unbelievably tempting that causes you to be so impatient that you don't just stop for just 1 second and clean up at least the silhouette of the portrait? Okay, I know you like that nose. It's okay. I'm sorry, but get over it. I know that nose is nice and fun to draw when it's a bit dark, but you've actually drawn a Mr. Potato Head. And I want that to be there in your mind. I know it's a bit rough, but it's just a tough love. Might help you get out of this impatience that's forcing you to finish a painting. Yes, it's all glamorous to finish a painting from corner to corner, but if we were to choose one side that we would value as the most important part of the painting, there is no one side that you worked on more than anything else. Everything is equally careless. So this is a big deal. This is a very, very big deal. Why? Why would this be okay? Why would this ever be okay? What are these? Are these the shadows of the tree? What is it exactly that's causing you to make these decisions here. This rim light should be for light from top down. There's no direction for the sun that you could have chosen. How many portraits have you painted? I know you probably, I don't know, you probably wanted to go for something a little bit more mosaic, but that's just not how it works. You cast a shadow of a tree. It's very, very easy to cast a tree leaf shadow. What you do is you just create a crazy shadow there and there. Cover everything with it, you make sure. And then with the negative on freehand lasso, you just make a couple of little reliefs there and there. Okay. All right, so the Mr. Potato Head, Daniel, you're here in the live stream today, which I really appreciate, thank you. But why do you think I called it Mr. Potato Head? What made that feeling that the features weren't actually connected? The nose was of a different what than everything else? How about the mouth? How about the eyes not looking in a focused direction? So I'm not saying that to be funny. I'm saying that so you know exactly the effect you're creating for your audience. Because right now I'm not just the teacher, I'm the audience. I'm also seeing your work. Oops, not multiply. I did not ask for that. Okay, so that's how you do it. Simple, easy as pie. And what you do is I just use darken layer on one of the darkest values on the skin, and then I'm going to use blur and then Gaussian blur. Start at 0 and just blur till I feel like I have a decent cast shadow blur from here until what I need. Also, cast shadow is lighter towards the finish and sharper towards the start. And in a cast shadow you can have contour light, so by erasing we can get back some of the cheek. We can get back some of the nose. We can get back some of the eyes here and there. All right. So it's not that difficult to break down Photoshop tool-wise what it means to cast a shadow off a tree. You guys think you have to paint in everything. We're using Photoshop. You can't complicate a photo. You can't complicate photo. You really have to be overthinking it. You have to be a professional overthinker, which is a lot of us are like that, to not think of it in layers like Photoshop, to complicate something that gives you full access like Photoshop. So a layer with Gaussian blur is all you really need for that effect. If you feel like you need some more, if the sunlight is coming from the top left a little bit, top right, and you feel like you have some sort of atmospheric diffusion, we're at this point talking about a silhouette. So if it's a silhouette, everything in the back here is just moot. It's not important anymore because everything is being drowned in some light. So silhouette plus the cast shadow off the tree. Now we have something that we can put money in. Now we have something that we have value through. These clouds, what is this? Blue sky and white clouds. I mean, I like how you use blue shadows on the clouds, but you weren't born yesterday. Blue clouds and a blue sky and white clouds is not the only way to make it feel like you have a sky. Sometimes the sky is blue-green. Sometimes there's a lot of glare coming off that you don't even see the sky as blue. You see it as pure white because you've decided on a direction from the sun. You also didn't blur objects in the distance or throw them with a haze or a wash. Everything has a wash because there is color in the air around us. So I'm just throwing this blue everywhere with a lightened layer just so that the background actually feels like it's in the background. And I'll go back if I feel like I'm kind of overdoing the space around her with too much. I'll go backward. I'm also going to cast some of that blue with a color layer, the Audacity, and I'm just throwing it there. Now that we know where the light is coming from, how easy is it to know where the subsurface is going to be on these leaves? How easy is it? You didn't know where it was. I read your comment. I read where it was. You wanted to have that rim lighting and that whole business with subsurface scattering on the leaves. How do you know where subsurface scattering is if you didn't decide where the sunshine is? Where's the sun? And where is the sun so that we can know how to subsurface? So that we know where the core shadows are so that we can make all that happen. Okay, so stop painting like like the fundamentals are optional, because they're not. So saturate and illuminate for subsurface scattering across bodies of shadow. And then we also get some of that white. Let me throw that in. And then we have to mix the color, which is a blue-green, very, very saturated. This is not what I want. Okay, and then a couple of blurs. Don't forget to use blur tool on the outsides of the canvas. Alright, so outside of all of that, if there are some hints of color in the skin tone, which there shouldn't be, she's in a cast shadow, but sometimes there are, we can bring in that same redness on her flower crown, on the lips. Her face still looks very, very, it's the term for it is Butterface. I'm sorry, that's just the term. Because you have no bone structure at all. So I'm sorry, it's a cruel thing to say, the term itself. But I just want to say the terms that this audience member, who have the potential to be rude, by the way, more rude than I am, with no educational intent, they will think these things. It's best to just know what it is that you're aiming for, the tropes that you're actually drawing. This would be a perfect face for an overweight character, a silly character, something like that. Okay, so I'm going to not really give her that duck lip. The duck lip means that the upper lip is not darker. So stop being so impatient. I know you personally. I know your personality. I know that you are impatient. I need to crack down on that bad habit. Okay, and I'm just going to start smudging. We need some smudging. Okay. Butterface is a face that doesn't have a lot of bone structure under it because it could be overweight, or it could be a little puffy, or maybe sickly. The person just had a Big Mac with a milkshake and went running, but then vomited, but then swallowed it. I don't really know what causes a Butterface, but it's just when the face is puffy, I guess, or sickly, or the person's extremely overweight. There's no more bone structure visible. All right, so I'm just blending away all of this messy, messy, messy stuff. Way too messy. You don't need a lot. And I'm going to start adding that golden rim along the hair with dodge tool. But in this case, Butterface would have been translated into just the fact that it was just really, really undeveloped face structure. You let the lasso completely get messy. I'm not gonna hold back with Daniel, because I know his intentions. I know he wants to perfect his work, so I'm not gonna hold back. I hope he doesn't want me to, because every single one of these things is an addition to your how many miles you've crossed. Every single one of my critiques, from the potato head comment to the Butterface comment, is all miles behind you. This is what the audience will see, and it's best to know what the audience will see and not accidentally create something that isn't easy to read. So there is the rim light on her cheek, just along that. And if the truth doesn't suit you, then there are other channels out there. I'm not talking to Daniel. I'm talking to those who have, been here the first time, or those who don't know how I teach, those who are watching the video. No, I know Daniel. He's a good boy. All right, and then remember that the edge of the face can be blurred. And then, of course, there is the blurring required. There's a lot to be done on this face, because you have depended on exactly what you're not supposed to do in knowing that how I teach, which is makeup. You've depended a lot on makeup, and I don't know if you used a reference. I don't know if you read the reference wrong. I don't even know if you chose a good reference, but this is a lot of symbolic stuff over here, Dan. And then there is, I mean, if you want to, that whole breast stuff going on, look up a good reference. But typically it's not the basic way you draw boobs. Boobs are not just outlined. They have a little bit of light in between them. And then you, if you don't do that, the breasts will look like they're plastic. I don't mean plastic surgery, I mean like actually made of plastic. Okay, so now you have your focal point there, and the tree bark is not really matching the light environment, so I'm going to just get a new layer and make sure everything is sitting on the same silhouette. I'm going to choose a shadow color for this environment. I'm going to choose something like this blue. Darken it along a green. This should be good. Put it on darken. Good, good, good. Too saturated. There we go. And so that those little moments of yellow really, really pop out. Those little bits where the sun is coming through. They really feel very, very strong. Oh, I don't think Lasso is behaving today, so I'm going to just tell you what it was I was gonna do. So completely darken everything so that she actually feels like she's in a silhouette, because at the end of the day, the sun is the reason why we're seeing everything, and the sun is in this silhouette state behind her. The size of the head is also off. I feel like you just started painting. You just, just started drawing the eyes just out of nowhere. There's no measurement or anything like that. That needs to go. How do you make it so that you don't change brush sizes every time you go to a new tool? I backtracked on Photoshop on purpose because the new Photoshop is just a piece of crap. It's just a clunky piece of shit. So I had to make sure that I don't have a lot of these glitches on Liquify. But if anyone has sorry, I think I swallowed some pollen. If anyone has any news on that, please let me know. I'm shrinking her head. That really, really thick lash line you've got going on is a mistake. Because it's all you're depending on for this to work. Okay? And this whole lasso stuff that I did with the cast shadow, the blur, these aren't tricks. That's not a trick. It's not something that rendered it for you. It's not a trick. It's the actual physical event. It's the actual thing. It's a reflection of how this actually happens. So please remember that Photoshop tools are not a trick, because that's the issue. That's what you have to fight. Did you know that there are people out there right now who think Photoshop renders for you? How many people have come across someone who says, oh, you use digital? Oh, okay. They think that Photoshop is rendering for us. They think that we're not actually doing the work or applying the paint. It's not a trick. Using blur tool effectively and lasso tool effectively, it's a tool, period. That's all it is. And you make the decisions. I decided to make these this much space apart. I am the one who decided that this would be a silhouette between one leaf and another stack of leaves. I made this choice. It's not tricks, it's tools. Okay? All right, so we have... Yes, Photoshop tools are not a trick. There's a horrible stigma out there about people who use Photoshop. They think that we get stuff rendered for us, which is a mistake. Istebrak should be doing critiques on everything, not just art, like painting programs and tablets. I'd binge watch them. I have a lot of stuff to say about Photoshop. I have a lot of stuff to say about Odyssey, Super Mario Odyssey. It's very, very freaky. It's very creepy, and it should be shut down. Super Mario Odyssey, I truly believe, is like an evil genius's way of controlling people. I have facts and I have analysis that I will one day reveal to all of you. All right? All right. So Adobe Creative Cloud allows you to install later versions of Photoshop or any other software. Yes. Any questions? You've had that too, Titan? People, yeah, it's very annoying. Before, after, you should be thinking about what you're doing in your workflow, Daniel. You should be thinking about your patience level. You should be thinking about your vanity, because vanity is what forces you to rush past all of the important stuff, check, 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 and rush straight into having a complete image. A complete image is nothing without the direction of the light source. A complete image is nothing without a recognizable character. So unrecognizable that they have no bone structure, that there's no amount of attention. I just see it as neglect and carelessness. I don't see it as style, because you're too young and too early in your journey to even consider style. It's like a Pokemon trainer stepping out of their door for the first time and thinking they can like catch Ho-Oh or something like that. I don't know. So please make sure that you are considering what I'm saying as a character critique for you as well. I know I shouldn't be critiquing people's personalities, but a lot of our problems, patience, self-opinion gets in the way of progress. So for those younger students, I really don't hold back. I kind of help make sure that they're moving in the right direction. There is a lot of threat to be impatient for teenagers. I was there. That's why I can say this. I was there. I was very impatient. It was horrible. I never thought I needed to stop and measure and find where the spine is. I thought that was stupid and that I knew where it was in my head. I never thought that I had to just do studies. Like, ew, is what I actually remember saying. Ew, studies. So don't be like that. All right. Would some of the flowers near her forehead be in shadow as well? Absolutely. It's just too much for me to cover. But if everything on her and in her person is standing in the way of the background and is under the tree. So that means that everything she is attached to her is also in silhouette. However, flower leaves and petals are of a different, they're translucent. So they have less density, and that means more light can come through them. So you might have more rim light around the flower crown. Edge Boy says, I just watched your form videos and I've been reborn. Thank you so much. You're very, very welcome. Digital painting is smart. You can practically paint any style you want with it, but spend zero cash on supplies. Absolutely, absolutely. Ho-oh. Ho-ho? Ho-oh. I remember saying ho-oh. I remember hearing ho-oh. I don't know why. Ho-ho. Wow, though, you should be a makeup artist for Extreme Makeover. I was a makeup artist. That's how that's what I worked after college. That was my job. Oh, okay. You read an article about the Liquify tool and NVIDIA graphics cards. Okay. I'll do that search. Let's move on to this piece. Framing is a tile. Can someone explain to me why a tile frame is a horrible, terrible idea and a horrible thing to do? It's almost abuse. It is horrible and mean to do it to a painting. Why is that? Why do we not do this to a painting? Okay. I'm just gonna wait. Ho-oh is correct? Oh, okay. I remember Ho-oh. I remember the very first episode when we saw him. That was really, really friggin' cool. Unlocking more of your backstory. Okay. So I'm just making sure I don't have repeat patterns. But I did a lot of corrections. Why are we doing it? The framing can be either portrait or landscape. Pick one. Thank you, Daniel. Because we have binocular vision. Excellent. One eye beside the other. Screws at the focal point? Absolutely. Composition? Absolutely. Boring and not cinematic? Absolutely. Tile is equal on all sides. Unless there is a good reason to use it, it makes the composition more boring. Perfect. Tile canvas prevent from good composition. It doesn't work with the rule of thirds. Beautiful job. and you mess up your composition. I really like that. A lot of you know the exact word for it. So the reason why we don't use a tile canvas is because we're trying to guide the eye toward a focal point. And if we're not doing that, we are throwing off pretty much all the delivery of what the object is. You are responsible for this little object that you decided to paint. You are responsible for it. It is cradled by you. If you're not delivering it right, you can render the crap out of it. Something about it will always feel wrong. So right now I'm just using this kind of golden ratio, whatever it is, really, it's got so many names. And I'm just trying to find a good position for all of these little guys. And I think you already had a good idea of where to place these guys, and things are already in place just by moving things over, but I'm just going to move things down just a touch. Okay. So things are actually moving really, really well now that we pushed it over. And that's all we really have to do. Because the spiral, if I'm not mistaken, does a little that. And we've got wolf, wolf, and then the main focal. Alright, so now that that's corrected, we have to... Okay, we have to decide what time of day is it. And it is, and how best to reveal all this detail. So if the creature design itself has a magic to it, why are we doing it so that the thing that glows is outshined by the time of day? I mean, if you were a director in a movie and something was glowing, there was a component that was glowing, you have to dim the environment a lot around it so that the component that's glowing can come through. So I'm going to start off with the eyes and then move on to this magic, the way the magic moves. So when we darken what you did in the background and we lighten a little bit, so I completely deleted any darken around the glows. There's not much else going on. This is a very, very boring composition because you depended way too much on the background and the patterns of the smoke around to pull off the painting because you just didn't have much else going on. So if I were to delete the what is it called, these horns, there's really just a really very, very abstract mess going around. There's nothing discernible. It's not a real cloud structure. It kind of looks like fog and like a wet mist or something like that, or mud. I feel like you used liquify way too much instead of using smudge tool to actually create that feathered distortion to the shape of a cloud. So I'm just going to use some of that here. I'm going to get rid of any detail on the edge of the canvas. That's not right. Just have to make sure that is good. And then I'm just going to push this wolf over a little bit. Just like that. Shouldn't be that empty on the far side. Okay. And then I think things are looking pretty okay. I'm going to make it feel like he's moving out of, like his form is slowly emerging from whatever this misty structure is. And you're kind of making this wolf have cast shadows, which is a bad idea. Is he floating or is he standing on a surface? Either or. You can't have one of them standing on a conveniently hard cloud structure and the other one kind of just dancing his way through. No cast shadows here. There's not enough sunlight. So I just feel like something like that would be much better. Okay, now that that's set up, I'm going to think about like just wide gradients and how they can play. So I'm going to grab this, grab a new layer, Shift G, and just do what I do. Thinking about where they're emerging from, kind of like a cloud of darkness. I'll just use this. Just to show how they're slowly taking over the light, and the light has just a small little pathway in between. I'm not worried about bringing in a halo of white behind the character because they're going to be really illuminated in a second. And you need some more like structures here, some more cloud bodies. Something else, anything else, but you see how we're doing less in order to pull off more. Okay, so then I'm going to think about color. So where is the color affecting everything? They come with a color, which is a really nice color combo, by the way. And I'm just making it so that the color as well as a representation of their like darkness taking over. And then everything is nice and set up for what? What is the next addition here? What comes next? Yeah, the concept is very, very dope. Man, I got a lot of mosquito bites. It just looks very dorky when you're trying to scare someone in the midday. Have you ever seen that? Like, there's a lot of movies that have someone super scary, but it's like mid-afternoon in a neighborhood, and they're just like standing there, and it just looks so dorky. Like the old It. Like, the guy was just there in midday, like with all this stupid ass makeup. It movie 1986. Okay, really, really hilarious stuff. So he's just like hanging out. It's like, yo man, what's up? It's midday, got some cat shadows, got some sunlight. I'm really supposed to be scary, so they kind of just overdid it. But in the recent one, even though I have a lot of critiques on this dorky ass recent one, at least they chose a good time of day. Things were kind of washed out, looking really, really overcast and really, really undersaturated. They took a little bit more time on actually choosing a silhouette for the face that was a bit more scary, but still I have a lot of, it just looks good child. No, that's not good for the story. So let me see if I can find another one as dorky ass. He was just standing in the field. You know that field that he stands in? Field. Nope. Okay, so it's just, I don't know, you'll have to watch it to see, but he's just standing in midday looking all stupid, and I just couldn't stop laughing. It was so hilarious. Less is more reminds me of my terrible university period, worst time of my life. So, color dodge them highlights, glows, highlights, excellent. So if the character's entire design is based off this glow, then let's just do that. There are two ways to do it. I'm going to set it on color dodge. You can do it manually if you wanted, but just to save time, I'm just going to use this. I'm going to start off by building a hierarchy of importance for the focal point. I'm going to give him the most important, highest, brightest, and then I'm going to give this guy the third most brightness. And then I'm just going to continue on. And that's just choosing some areas that are glowing. And if there are like little lightning bolts coming out, I'll illuminate them, but in like, what are they called? What is it called, Tom? Like intermittently? What's the term for it when it's just like Morse code? It's a good term, I think, intermittently. But it's not just one straight streak of brightness, but like just on and off. That makes it seem more magical, more unstable. And then finally we have one really, really big glow. And the halo is no longer I think I'll just continue using this. Dependent on the environment, so I don't have to make the environment super bright. The halo is now coming right off the character. And if you feel like that's too much, that's okay. You can go back and start using the negative space around the character, their eyes, to give their face more characterization. So you can make it so that it's a perfect circle. a little bit more creepy. And then bring in all that extra distortion. Interval or intermittent, alternatively alternating. Oh, thank you so much. Exactly. Alternating, yeah. Intervals. So brightness and intervals for these streaks. So bright, dark, bright, dark. Okay, so for the concept, like the concept itself, I would try something a little bit more thought out. Feels like you just put, like, it's a cool design, but the horns are not in perspective, and the face isn't necessarily that scary. It kind of is like a rip-off of that one cat. Maybe it might be him, the alder monster, the alderman. He's like a baby snatcher. Do you guys remember him? He's from, they also used him in Over the Garden Wall. Very, very scary. But if you are using from him, you kind of should add a little bit more body to the design here. And then we did talk about gesture. So there's 0 gesture going on. So you had no gesture lines in your planning. So how do you characterize him with a gesture? Just think of attitude. What kind of attitude problem, if he had one? If he's all monster, then he would come in like that. If he's all sass and grace, he'd come in like that. If he's a little bit of both, he'd like Aquaman, he'd come in like that. That the forward haunch enough to show intimidation, but the little mermaid tail to show a little bit of grace or femininity. Right now he's just like, boop. He's just like that. And it's very, very derpy. It's very boring. If this was a single standing character design, you can give him the skirt, something like that. That might help. That actually exactly might help this painting, just to show that the pets are a part of him. What else can we add? You can add a bit more like cloud structure and atmospheric fade to show how the light is slowly dimming into the distance and how they're just coming in with a cloud formation. You can show what it is that they're taking over. It could be like a tiny little town, kind of like a little steeple or whatever, and make them a little bit more symbolic. So not actually drawing in the horns, but making them more of a cloud part, or like they're made of something else, or they're not even there. What else would we add? I would probably add some silver lining to see where the sunlight is still left behind for like a sense of hope, something cheesy like that. A couple more like pine trees I would add here and there, just to like kind of create the for a scale reference, make him feel more colossal and strong, and just like add more of these components, more of this layering of just like this feathered kind of edge, maybe a feathered skirt, not feathered in the like blur, like actual feathers, because it seems like an owl that you're pulling from. And if this was a skeleton, by the way, it's really hard to tell. So you might want to not worry so much about the light traveling through the snout and just make it as dark as it needs to be. That's it, I think. Any other suggestions? By the way, it's really, really great to do this blueprinting kind of like thing as late as you want. I mean, it's not a scapegoat if you can't do it. You can't like excuse yourself from planning because, well, you can do it later, because this painting will always have a stiffness to it that you will never cure, because when it mattered, you never trained it to be loose. You set this painting up for failure in that you never really gave him a gesture that you worked with. You really have to overdo it. So I'm just using the negative space with my red guiding lines, which I'll eventually incorporate into the painting, to kind of make it feel like he's feathering and twisting and turning like a tornado. Alright, so the negative space, so the feathering is here, so that the negative space would be on the outside of that, and that's how you get rid of an edge. Sorry, that's how you get rid of a line. Sorry, too much oxygen. Been out all weekend. Okay, so I'm just using these guiding lines to help me figure out where my middle ground, foreground, backgrounds are. I'm going to use a nice dark foreground value and then mix it with some blue. Look at my navigator. It's a little bit too dark, but I will fix it after with some atmospheric perspective. Throw in a lighter one here. The trees will go somewhere there. Not so worried about detail, but a younger student would have gone straight in for the tree leaves. This is just placement. And then some fog. I'm going to start darkening this, shifting it over into the blue that I need. And just look at that. Now I have a guiding line wherever I need it. And we just keep working like that. And you can darken as you need to by darkening the layer and then just moving forward. I'm sorry, locking the layer and darkening the line. Sorry about that. I'm kind of all over the place today. Okay, so we're just building up a nice little system. And right in front of all of this is some fog. So just use fog, use mist, use all of that to your advantage. Show how the clouds are threatening to take over the little town. Put some little lights, maybe a Christian little steeple here to work like a pagan versus religious Christian kind of theme. So these lines right here, which have already been locked, I can just choose any color I want for the negative space. That's how I work. That's how kind of I do it. So the line will eventually get incorporated, and that's something to remind you that you can do this with your, early stuff as well. That you don't have to lose all the lines you decided on. The horns do look flat because you don't have a light environment to reveal them. They're shaded from dark to light on an x-axis and a y-axis. There's no z-axis where there's bounce light or something. If you want to give them a bit more depth, I would use this secondary light source here a little bit more intensely. And that will kind of wake them up. And this artist did it, but they just did it so dim because that brightness of the environment where it used to be, so there's a cast shadow there, was just taking over. But I really wouldn't recommend doing this because you flattened him. He has to feel like he's in the distance. Okay, so I'm completely lowering this. And then what I would do to really wake this scene up is, which is what I just said, I'm going to use this cloud brush. And believe it or not, I'm going to grab the environment color and just fade everything. And make it about, see, these horns are such a bad idea. So I'm going to blur them. And make it so that I'm lightening only what I really need. Okay, so I'm just going to go back and darkening just the most basic stuff leading to that. And then we've got the foreground. This is kind of like turning into a tangent. I've got to clean that up. That's the rest of his skirt kind of taking over. That's the cloud. And see how I'm not blending all my brush strokes away? We've got more opportunities here to create edges of clouds against other clouds. And that little bit of light maybe shining through into the distance. You gotta think in a room. You gotta think about a room. You can't just flatten the image out. It's a nice mist. And just only think in whatever is immediate, whatever is there. So I want a guy who's flowing, who is surrounded by his animals. It's not just that. It's a guy who is flowing. What is he flowing in? What's allowing the flow to happen? And if he's flowing, what is he going towards? So that means there's a wind kind of like element that you're going to be representing. And if there's a wind element, what time of day is it? What kind of weather is it? Is it really bad weather? Is he bringing the bad weather? So it's not just a guy with a whatever. You have to think of his environment, his habitat. That's how you create more atmosphere, more of an active design. I should have done the inverse of that by darkening the space behind him instead. So I'm getting a bit lazy. Okay, there we go, much better. So you see how much you depended on the fur of the wolves, and they just didn't even matter that much. Just think about the negative space. Look at that. Brushstrokes can give you the best fur design. Just look at that. You over-depended on your reference. You have to make them look like they're looking at a character, so, I mean, at a direction, so I would lower this whole thing and kind of just make him feel like he's hunched over, looking at something that he's about to take over, something like that. There's a lot that I can do, but again, this is just, I need layer access and lots of time to really make this happen, but I hope this kind of worked in the right direction. I feel like the framing is still off. He can be a little bit lower. I would put him right here and put one of his wolves up there and make it 3 wolves. I would move him right here. I don't think we did much for the composition. His whole position, like his whole setup, could just be down here. But again, he's just standing so boring. The point of illustration is that you've used all aspects of design. Gesture, composition, light environment, costume, texture, all your lights, so that the bounce light, ambient light, subsurface scattering, every layer that something can be customized, and you customized it, like in Skyrim when you can just change everything. That's how I want you to think about your illustration. It isn't just one instance of design and that's it. The rest should just look right, because you've paint and it should look right, but it doesn't, and then you wonder why it doesn't. Well, you didn't think it through enough. Most of the time you guys aren't taking your painting seriously. So paste in place after. More atmosphere by doing less. If you want all those electric little things in there, again, I wouldn't just put them there all cheesy. I'd create like an anvil cloud formation, and in that cloud formation I would put, so I just can't stop talking about this painting, but in this cloud formation I would show how the light is somewhere in the distance. He's in the cloud formation, and then the lightning can go down just like that. The lightning can be in little intense streaks just like that, going downward. It doesn't make much sense that they really, really thin, dangerous, sharp-looking ones going up. Some could be going a little bit out. You barely see them. Okay, so something like that. Obviously not that bright, jeez. Kind of everything's going to beat the crap out of this tiny little town. Alright, so good luck with your painting. I hope this helped you. Do that. And I'm going to let you guys go. Thank you everyone for coming today. To join the class and send in your work, you just have to go to istebrak.com and click on the little Google Plus icon to join. Please make sure you read the rules and stay part of the discussion about the next challenge, which hasn't been announced yet or even decided yet, but I will decide it based off what you guys recommend. Portrait Studio error, please, if you are having an issue with your Portrait Studio, please watch one of the latest videos. Discusses the error. It's just named error, so please go get that. And for anyone interested in Patreon, you will not be able to get rewards or register or complete your pledge if you don't pledge before the 31st, because rewards are deleted, and people who pledge after are expecting rewards. That's not how it works. They stay up for 24 hours and then they're just gone. And they're only for processed patrons. So if you want to be part of Discord, you want to be sent a Discord invite, you have to register before that. If you are looking for an alternative to private tutoring, your work is looked at. The group is growing, but it's never going to be like a 300 group, a 300 person stream. It's tops 20 people. And what we do is we have a private stream and we just discuss your work. We discuss the subject and the assignment for that month, and that's it. And really, really good news, the gears for a Mac release are in motion, God willing, and we'll get that out to you guys as soon as possible. The logistics of it isn't ironed out just yet. For those who purchased it knowingly for PC, might not be given another download, but for those who completely cannot run it no matter what, with wine or not, might be provided with a download link. I want to stay fair to us and to you, and stay as transparent as possible, meaning that the Portrait Studio price for Mac will be higher than it is for PC, because of the hurdles that Apple puts in the way of developers. Lots of hurdles, lots of fees. You have to have a Mac in order to export to Mac, which is what we're dealing with right now. We have to get a hold of a Mac computer, and then just get that out to you guys. Also, the graphics components are very different. They don't transfer equally because of DirectX, so that's a whole other body of work that Abu is supposed to be doing, and it's a lot to put on him. So we have to make sure we're going to be staying fair. If you feel like you have to have Portrait Studio at that price, then that price is good for you. But if you are having issues with the price of Portrait Studio, you want it at a discounted rate, or you've collected some money but not all of it, like 70% of it, let me know and I'll see what I can do to get you your copies. Please make sure you're backing up your copies, that you don't just max out your downloads. For those who have it on Selfie, if you've maxed out your downloads, please don't request another one. You get 5 downloads limit, and you don't just keep getting one. And that's it. Thank you, Ev, because it's not a CD. I'm actually going to take some questions. Thank you for the whipping. Did you save all the critiques? I'd like to have mine if you have it. I don't give those back anymore. I don't give those back. Students have been using my copies as theirs. Everything that I did today, you should be able to recreate. I don't think so. I have good internet, but I don't need a problem. If you guys, if I disconnect, I am sorry. It's just like stormy season here. The artist could consider extending the fur cloak of the stag creature to fill in the negative space and add movement. But yeah, that's it. Thank you everyone for joining. I will see you guys on Thursday. Bye everyone.